All right, so we are here to talk about the evil unsubscribe button. Florence, you just mentioned kind of having to stay on top of security and all those changes, kind of one of those responsibilities you have when you're responsible for a platform. This is actually a change that happened with the email service providers like Gmail that required a response from the UMass Amherst team. So we're excited to tell that story. So yeah, my name is Jonathan Mayer. I am the VP for Architecture at IntraEdge. I was excited to be part of this solution. And then I'll let Rachel introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Rachel Shipman. I am the Salesforce Product Manager in Central IT at UMass Amherst. And UMass Amherst is the flagship campus of the University of Massachusetts system with over 30,000 undergrad and graduate students.
Excellent. And Sarb is also joining. He'll be in the chat to help answer questions. He is the brains behind a lot of the solution and just an incredible partner to work with. And we're really excited to tell this story and hope that you can all benefit from that. All right, Rachel, maybe tell us a little bit about the existing architecture that was at the Amherst setup.
Absolutely. We had kind of three core components that you'll see in that middle line on the diagram. So we are on Marketing Cloud Engagement. We started in maybe 2019, 2020 onboarding groups across campus to try to kind of eliminate or mostly eliminate the MailChimps and the other systems to get like one central communications platform. So we have now 28 business units and 256 users. We send about 2 million emails a month out of Marketing Cloud, commercial and transactional. There's some limited use of SMS, kind of intentionally limited. We want to not oversaturate that channel, but like we have a bit with email. So we're just kind of feeling out still our SMS strategy, but we do have two short codes, and we use Marketing Cloud for SMS, not necessarily in the subcenter. We have a real strong reliance currently on implied consent, and we can talk about a little bit more about that as we get into kind of improvements made around this design. But we do, kind of use our CRM data to define audiences and sending it from Marketing Cloud, not necessarily always, having that explicit consent to start. And then we have an upload form in Marketing Cloud. So like all the list sends that, we can't necessarily segment the list based on CRM data. There is a list, an upload form cloud page in Marketing Cloud that calls a Boomi process and then works with our CRM to create lead and find contact records. So then I'm moving over one from the left there, that we have Marketing Cloud Connector, which connects Marketing Cloud Engagement to Service Cloud with EDA. We call this our flagship 360 org. It's the largest and oldest of our Salesforce orgs. We have 3 production Salesforce orgs on campus. This is the biggest one with about 600 users, lots of different use cases, mainly involving student facing or student data. And then let's see. We have custom objects currently in that Salesforce org to manage our old subscription center information. So they're custom objects to have communication categories, communication channels, and then the preferences themselves, which would be considered like the opt-in, opt-out level. And those are associated with lead and contact records. And then the kind of star of the show, or like former star of the show on the right was our custom web application that was our subscription center. So the decision was made way back again in like 2019 to build a custom subscription center. This was prior to, I think like a lot of evolution that happened in the platform that we'll talk about as we kind of go through our slides. But at that point, we decided to build a custom web app. And that talks to, both Service Cloud and Marketing Cloud via API calls. It's hosted on a local server here at UMass. And it does have an opt-in path, so people can have like opt-in links for different channels on their school and department websites, and people can opt in. It also does currently have SSO and email authentication, so you can like sign in directly to it. We'll hear more about that as we go along.
Very good. So I know this is just kind of like another overview of the architecture. Those of you who are watching it, maybe take a screenshot of this. Has a little more detail behind the different architecture. I do want to take a step back, though. Many of you that, if you're working with Marketing Cloud, you probably have a similar architecture here. where because of the desire to serve multiple units across campus, you ended up with multiple business units, which is exactly the, Rachel talking about wanting to consolidate all those MailChimps. And it really becomes clear as you investigate that you need some kind of custom preference center. So this is a very common pattern, either custom management objects or sometimes campuses will use campaigns and campaign members as the data model. And then, they happen to have web developers and a server on campus to host. And so they were able to build out a custom front end. Sometimes we'll see this built out in Experience Cloud or built out in other places. So a very common pattern. And I just also want to call out the Amherst team with this list processor, and in general, the way that you can embed these pieces onto the college and department websites, like very much wants to serve the campus. They want to make it easy to send emails. They want to make it easy for people to opt in and opt out. And so all this infrastructure was kind of necessary to build in order to achieve those goals. And I guess like it's also a thing just I think for all of us working in the ecosystem, there's times you do a lot of hard work and it's awesome because you're delivering incredible business value. And sometimes you do a lot of hard work because it's just kind of forced upon you. And when you look at an infrastructure like this, there's kind of a combination of both of those things. And we really ended up kind of back in that same situation where some of the platform changes, some of the kind of regulation compliance changes force some additional problems. And I'll talk a little bit about this evil unsubscribe button that really forced a big part of this change. It was kind of like, hey, we have to re-engineer this whole thing anyway. But it was great working collaboratively with the team to actually identify some additional exciting business value that could be rolled out. So it wasn't just a bunch of work to re-implement in order to deal with these problems that are forced upon us. We also could do some good things for the user. I don't know, Rachel, if you had some comments about those lower points.
Yeah, so kind of tackling those last 4 points of business problems that we could improve upon. So we mentioned, the custom web application. It was, it was the right solution at the time, but it did come with maintenance and the hosting that we mentioned before. So, whenever there needed to be downtime to work on that server, or there was a separate development team that built the application that wasn't super tight with our Salesforce and Marketing Cloud teams. So there were just kind of organizational issues and maintenance issues there. Also, the replacing the custom object model with the standard object model. So the custom object model we came up with back on our own by moving to the standard object model, the consent model. That allowed us to kind of use an object model that's going to be part of the Salesforce ecosystem, going forward, and supported and enhanced, and we'll be able to take advantage of those. Also helps us kind of be in a better place for future improvements and even other products like Data Cloud with the individual contact point phone and contact point email, adopting those objects. Another benefit was that these objects don't count against our data storage entitlements. So all of our consent records, all our communication categories and channels and everything else is not counting towards all those precious entitlements. From the operational burden standpoint, we'll talk a little bit more later about the improvement for the senders, but they had to basically just simplify the number of steps that they need to do a send, and kind of the cognitive load of the sender to remember which data extensions to include so that they didn't actually accidentally include someone who had opted out of that particular channel for commercial message. And then modernizing the subscriber experience. Again, the custom web app was great. It was built a while ago, and we made some improvements as needed over time. But this gave us the opportunity to really kind of do a refresh and rethink what options the user should have in their user interface to the sub center.
Perfect. Yeah. And so that was something that was, built some energy behind the team. Like, hey, we're going to do this work, but there's going to be some good stuff as well. And it's not just about maintenance for the sake of maintenance, but also delivering some business value. So thank you for that, Rachel. Just real quick, kind of a deep dive into what is this evil unsubscribe button? I'm sure most of you know what this is, but this was something that the email platform holders introduced as a feature to their user interfaces to make things easier on their customers and harder on all of us, right? So just building out an unsubscribe button that's directly there inside. This is my Gmail, right inside the Gmail interface on mobile or on the desktop. And what that did was the email service provider was sending back to whoever was sending the message saying, hey, you better unsubscribe this person. And so that resulted in a technical challenge where each of the email platforms that are doing the sends on our behalf had to figure out, well, how do I respond to this request from Gmail or this demand from Gmail that this person be unsubscribed? And so Marketing Cloud, fortunately, did have this idea of a publication list. And so their framework was like, if you're using a standard publication list that's associated with this email send, we'll opt them out of that publication list. So they're opting down, they're not opting out completely. Unfortunately, if you're like Amherst, one of the many customers that implemented a custom solution and you aren't using publication lists, Marketing Cloud is like, well, we don't know what they're unsubscribing from. We don't know your custom. Thanks, Caleb, for the shout out for ASG News. Yeah. We don't know what your custom model is. We're not going to go in and unsubscribe them from that custom object that's in your data model. We're going to just unsubscribe them from everything. And then think back to Rachel's point about how we were consolidating multiple systems from across Amherst into one Marketing Cloud, like really disastrous and frustrating for all the communicators on campus. That one push of an unsubscribe button could pull them out of getting those critical communications from other departments that they might want. And so this really was kind of a must solve problem. And so just in terms of the solutions, one of the solutions I already alluded to is that we had to bring publication lists into the flow. But remember, we wanted the flow to be as easy as possible for communicators. And part of the reason to not use publication lists was that it was an extra step. And so there's some engineering that Rachel will talk to in terms of the flow for communicators to make it just one, kind of one simple framework for getting that over. So that was one piece of it. While we were at it, we went ahead and replaced that custom web app with cloud pages. So we have the native Marketing Cloud pages. Also replaced, and Rachel already called this out, but moved to the new consent data model to save on data storage and to future-proof things. And then there's that sending workflow that we'll talk about. And another piece that did have to be part of the solution as well was a temporary purchase of a new Marketing Cloud instance. Those that work with Marketing Cloud, you don't have sandboxes. If you didn't already have a multi-org setup where you had a business unit that could kind of serve as a sandbox, you have to have a place to build this thing. And so the kind of solution that was here was a temporary instance of Marketing Cloud that was connected to a Salesforce sandbox that was part of this overall solution. Next slide is just real quick on the data model. You can actually see, and then kudos to the team that designed the initial custom solution. It maps very nicely to the preference model that's there inside of Salesforce now with the individual model and all those consent objects. There was an additional need for a business brand object, and I think Rachel may have a few things to say about that. And then this, in fact, Rachel, if you maybe want to talk about this, this is a great kind of example of what these Salesforce objects now map to in terms of the real world on campus.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Jonathan's right. We were lucky and fortunate building on the work of our coworkers and those that came before us and made these design decisions, that the mapping of our custom objects to the consent objects was really straightforward. So essentially our business units, which in this example, student affairs would be one of the business units and one of the 28 in our Marketing Cloud instance, has a, every business unit has a business brand record. And then all of our channels, we called them communication channels, mapped to communication subscriptions. And then, that was categories. Categories matched to communication subscriptions. Channels, like say parent service events, mapped to communication subscription channel types, and then our preference records mapped to communication subscription consent records. So one of the biggest challenges I think for our team, like in Marcom and in IT, is adopting the names of these new objects, but the mapping was fortunately straightforward and made things a little easier for us in massaging our existing data to fit into this new model.
Perfect. Thank you.
So this is a little bit more about the communicator experience. And so we had talked about how we wanted to make the send process as simple as possible on the senders and the end users of Marketing Cloud. So essentially, like everything on the right side, after the first two boxes on the left and kind of the middle, when you get to that first decision point, this is all handled by Marketing Cloud. So this is all kind of by bringing in that publication list functionality to both handle the header unsubscribes or the evil unsubscribe button, and also just into the send process. That made like everything that happens after those first two choices by the sender kind of all handled by the system. So those really, will be a great improvement for our communicators. So they are selecting their data extensions, their audience, their targeted sendable data extensions, and then they're selecting the publication list. And so every channel in our architecture has a publication list associated with it. And as from the sender's perspective, this actually, even though they're doing, one step of audience and then one step of selecting the publication list, it makes the process really clear to them, because before what they were doing was they had to remember to include, opt-outs or opt-ins, in addition to the audience that they wanted to send to. They had to remember to include those other data extensions, custom data extensions that use our custom records, custom objects, and that first step of selecting the sendable DE. So now they kind of can just think about who they want to send to in that step, and then they select the publication list. And in the second step, it's very clear, and that part of their flow, and then the system handles everything to know who's opted in and who's opted out for that channel.
Perfect. Thank you. And then lastly, just kind of a quick look at the user experience. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add on this slide.
Yeah, so this is just some screenshots of our new subscription center, and pardon the data there of cryptozoology is not one of the 116 bachelor programs that we offer at UMass-Amherst, but it's one that we use for our testing and demo purposes. So these are just to show you what the user sees when they click Manage Preferences. So there are two links in the footer of a commercial email. One is unsubscribe and one is Manage Preferences. The one-click unsubscribe is truly a one-click, so they just click and they go to a page that tells them they're unsubscribed, but they can then get to this preference center and kind of manage preferences part of the experience from there. But if they click Manage Preferences, or in our opt-in flow also, if they kind of are clicking to opt into a specific channel, they can then get to Manage Preferences. So any place basically they say they want to manage their preferences, they'd end up here. If they're coming from a specific channel, they see the view on the left. So if you get an email from the cryptozoology department and you click Manage Preferences from that, you'd go straight to the category or for that department, which will show you all the channels associated and what your status is, subscribed, unsubscribed, and then you could unsubscribe from all for that particular category of communications. You can also, of course, go up using some of the links toward the bottom of the page to view all the categories and channels across the organization. And that has a really nice feature that we didn't have in our existing marketing subscription center, which is that you can search all of the categories and channels, both the name and the description. We had a basic search, but this is like a lot nicer and more targeted search experience. They are able to navigate all the different business units, categories, and channels. There's obviously like per channel opt-out we see here. There's also the global opt-out that you see in the screenshot on the right. And one of the things that I really love as a kind of on the Salesforce core side is that we can control a lot of the UI elements from CRM side configuration. So we have like different kind of custom metadata and things that we can use to control like what fields show at the top of the page about the user, which are editable, whether we're going to show the text tab or not, like we're planning on when we're going to kind of roll that out to people. So you'll see an email and a text tab next to each other. But a lot of that configuration we can actually do through kind of flips and switches in CRM rather than having to bother our web developers to make those changes.
Perfect. All right, looks like we are right on time for getting to the Q&A section.
Killing
We
it
do have
with
a
time. Good job.
yeah, we have a quick thing. If you want to scan a QR code, you can put your email address in, and it gives you a PDF with kind of a little bit more of an overview of the solution. So love you to take a look at that. I think we'll also drop a link to that in the chat. But just pivoting to Q&A, and I do want to do one more compliment to the Amherst team. I mentioned this already, but just it was a pleasure working with a team that had such empathy for their communicators. Right, they're really looking at, I think, very servant leadership. Like, how do we set this up so our communicators on campus can intuitively send stuff out? We saw some good improvements there, and that same lens of empathy when building out this subscriber experience. I think the technical design was great, but they had just really paying attention to little nuances, like, oh, this might not be intuitive for the user if the button looked like this, and how could we think about this so that it just makes sense for our users, that they have a good experience. So just absolute pleasure working with the team, and really happy with what got delivered here. All right, so let's go to Q&A.
Sure. I don't know, Jonathan, if you want to ask the questions, or I certainly can. So Rachel, how big is the team supporting Marketing Cloud at UMass?
It's an excellent question. We are doing some, I'd say, like racy roles and responsibilities work ongoing on our division of labor between Marcom and IT. So it's like something that we're thinking about, and I think the sub center really was the project made us think and rethink what roles we needed and who should be responsible for what. But essentially, we have two full-time Marketing Cloud admins, and one is in Marcom and one is in IT, but they work they work collaboratively together. We kind of have segmented things so that the IT side of the house is kind of responsible for the platform, monitoring entitlements, making sure we're up on what's happening, what's coming in upcoming releases, any security updates, dealing with kind of all of that side of Marketing Cloud as an enterprise solution. And then the Marcom team is really great at training, onboarding, supporting the communicators. A lot of times the smaller schools and colleges and departments, especially individual departments, don't have a dedicated communicator. So Marcom is often supporting those groups really like hands-on and doing a lot of the kind of day-to-day support, ticket management, those kinds of things. So collaborative effort between IT and Marcom.
Awesome. Yeah, Jonathan, I don't know if there's one of these questions that you want to go to next. There's a couple from Vivian. I can read one of them out and then hand over to you. Does that work?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
I like the one, Vivian, great questions, by the way. Do you have a workflow for someone who wants to resubscribe?
So Jonathan, do you want to take this one or do you want me to?
You please. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is a great thing about the sub center is that like they can actually they can resubscribe from the preference center because of the publication list. It allows them to like if they can just like you can go to one of the emails they've gotten and hit manage preferences, or they can go to like a school college department website that says, hey, like opt in for this communication. And they will actually then be able to just flip that toggle back on. So they can actually self-service kind of on, flip their subscriber status on and off. Even if they've globally opted out in the past, they can actually go in and say they want to like opt into parent newsletters or something. Like they could go and do that, and they could actually like go to that particular channel in that parent services category, set that subscribe to on, and that will adjust their overall subscription status in Marketing Cloud. So that was another asset to using publication lists, because prior we had to have them kind of jump through a little bit more hoops and do some manual things to get them opted back in.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's another thing I remember thinking through, like how is this going to be intuitive for the subscribers so they can get back into communication with us. I think I can maybe knock out two pretty quickly. Florence asked about SMS and if that's possible to use that with this. This subscription center, from a data model perspective, supports SMS. Like it's built out there inside of the UI, and there's like a custom setting that will toggle it on or off for people to use it. Rachel mentioned they have some short codes, but that's kind of an evolving area at the Amherst campus. So yes, this definitely supports that. And then I also think, Rachel called out about kind of the future proofing of going to the consent data model. So that's the exact same data model that's actually used in Marketing Cloud Next, which is the same data model that's now used in their modern version of digital engagement. So it really would be aligned with Marketing Cloud short codes usage or digital engagement long code usage. So from a framework perspective, it's definitely something that could be flexible longer term. And then that consent data model, if you really geeked out about it, you can also do consent for other types of channels as well. So like WhatsApp messaging, or even consent for capturing your data when it comes to visiting a website. So it's a pretty flexible model. The challenge is just building out an interface that gets in front of your constituents so that they can manage those preferences. And then there was a question that came from Frank via Florence about how the Marketing Cloud temp instance was used as a sandbox. And so it's pretty straightforward. There just was a instance of Marketing Cloud that was purchased, kind of with very low allocations of resources, and then just directly connected to a Amherst sandbox. So a sandbox is spun up, and as you guys know, Marketing Cloud can be kind of connected to one Salesforce org at once. And it just happened that one was a sandbox. So that gave us a CRM environment that mirrored the data model and the data from the Amherst production environment from Flagship 360, and then a clean marketing cloud environment where those cloud pages could be built out, and some of those workflows and processes that Rachel showed could also be built out. Let's see here.
To your second point there, Frank, is it leverage for enhancements? We're kind of just talking about what to do with it now that we're through the build and release of this new subcenter to production. We're not sure yet. Like, it's kind of hard to have it connected to the full sandbox because of needing to refresh frequently. We're not sure exactly where. We did have kind of initially in our design phase of this overall project with IntraEdge, we did talk about multi-org connector, and so I think we probably will let the temporary sub sandbox go at the end of this, and then can maybe rethink our multi-org strategy going forward. But it did, did kind of bring up again for us that pain point of working with a platform that, like, not having that sandbox environment is difficult. And maybe if we look at future communications tools from Salesforce, maybe that will be part of the offering.
Let's see here. Vivian asked us a follow-up question around the sending someone a form if you want them to resubscribe. I guess definitely technically possible. I think that just depends on your interpretation of kind of the email rules and what kind of consent is allowable. But it's certainly a campaign where you look through and identify people that really should be getting a certain newsletter or really should be getting a certain piece of information and sending that over. I will also note that certain types of communications or transactional communications are just kind of considered critical. So like, you can't really opt out from getting a receipt when you purchase something. So many campuses will interpret certain types of campus communications as that type of a critical communication. We're not marketing to you. We are delivering information that's important for you as a student or important for you, as a staff member. And so this model also has the ability to have essentially preferences that you're automatically opted into and you can't opt out of. And there's a toggle to show whether or not that's visual, so people kind of understand whether they're getting it or not. But that's another framework that you might use if there's critical communication that someone should be getting that's not kind of interpreted under the marketing area.
Yeah, that's right. We do send a lot of, when I was saying that, kind of over 2 million emails a month coming out of Marketing Cloud, that includes both commercial and transactional. So we do send a lot of transactional messaging. So, say you register for orientation, like, you're going to get, a confirmation and a reminder about that event registration. That's transactional, even though it's coming out of Marketing Cloud, it's transactional. It doesn't have the, opt out and manage preferences links at the bottom.
Yeah. And I'll take a quick stab at one last question, and maybe Rachel, you can add on to that, and then we'll wrap up. It was kind of a question about, do you have a bunch of teams and departments insisting on having their marketing materials or their lists inside of the subscription center? Because it's a big campus and lots of people are going to want to get their communications out in front of people. One part of that answer was that business brand umbrella. And so in order to have your communications being sent out and managed inside this preference center, you have to be set up and onboarded with the Amherst communication team. And then there'd be a business brand that is set up for you. And that might be your department or your college or your center, whatever that business brand is defined. And then when you're interacting with folks in the context of your business brand, that first level that Rachel showed in the subscription center is kind of related to that business brand. And so that protects other brands from kind of getting overwhelmed with things that maybe not be relevant. But you could always go fishing if you wanted to and go search through with that search functionality that's there. So it's kind of a nice separation of concerns, that a little bit of have your cake and eat it too. Yeah, it's not a best practice for a department to have tons and tons of different things, but they're really only doing damage to themselves or frustrating their own constituents by choosing to do that because of that business brand customization that was added. I don't know if that covers it, Rachel, if you had anything to add.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you, Jonathan. The other thing I would just say is, like, give a lot of kudos to our team in Marcom that works with, onboarding these groups. So they work really closely with each department that's coming on, and they work with them through, category and channel changes so that they're getting good advice from our professional communicators.
All right. I see this, the Dreamin team is on. They're staring at us. It's time for us to be done. Thank you, Rachel, so much.
Yes, thank you, Rachel. That was really great. And Jonathan and the IntraEdge team, thank you so much for sponsoring the event. You all did great. Yeah.